Here again at the Talk Sense show, and we are very glad to have the following speaker. He is part of Jibrel network. Talal has been in the region here in Dubai for a long time. Actually, one of his offices is just across the street there at Gate 5 in DIFC. Talal, could you come on stage with me as we are live streaming today here in out of Liberty House? How have you been, Talal?
Great. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor. I've been watching your show for quite a while, so happy to be part of it.
Absolutely. So, Talal, first of all, congratulations on winning in Abu Dhabi the award for being one of their fintechs, basically.
Yeah, so I think when we saw the FinTech Abu Dhabi's conference was a very well organized conference. They had something called the Innovation Challenge. And to apply for the Innovation Challenge, they stated several problem statements. One of the problem statements was the creation of a platform that allows for digitized debt and equity offering and management. And for us, as soon as we saw that problem statement, we're like, all right, this is exactly what we do as a business. So we applied, and alhamdulillah, we were able to win. And we'll hopefully be representing ADGM in the Singapore FinTech Festival on the 11th of November.
Fantastic news. So you guys are flying out now to Singapore to basically represent ADGM going forward. All right. So, I mean, just to give our viewers a little bit of background, what is Jibrel Network and how is it different than Jibrel.com?
All right. So we started Jibrel AG, which is our Swiss entity, in early 2017.
Okay.
The idea was to create it's a blockchain development company focused on the tokenization of financial assets. Actually, our CEO and my partner Yazan initially started the idea as something called Hawala. And the idea was to use cryptocurrencies to transfer money across different jurisdictions. And then we quickly realized that even though cryptocurrencies are one of the best ways to exchange value, they're not necessarily the best way to store value. So we realized that there's a big gap in bringing stability on-chain. So if you think of traditional financial assets like bonds, equities, commodities, they're relatively stable, depends where you come from, but relatively stable, regulated and insured.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas cryptocurrencies are easy to send and receive, 24/7 and programmable. And I'd stress on programmability being probably the most important part, because for the first time ever, you can embed logic into an asset that has it act in specific ways. So the main concept of Jibrel is to combine the best of both worlds.
Got it. And you guys also came into the papers by saying that the first sukuk has been deployed on
the Ethereum blockchain. Yeah.
So how was that journey? Could you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, so basically when we started Jibrel as ambitious founders, we said we want to tokenize all financial assets. Actually, our tagline was tokenize everything. And then we also realized that it's impossible to tokenize everything from a product market fit point of view. So we evaluated different asset classes: cash, commodities, equities, futures, and debt.
Okay. And
we started off with cash. Why did we start off with cash? Because today, if I go to a bank, if I go to a real estate broker, anyone that works in the traditional financial world, and I tell them I'm going to automate everything that has to do with your cash flow, but the payout is going to be in Ethereum or Bitcoin or other crypto asset, banks won't accept it, businesses will have a hard time accepting it. The reality is that you pay your bills in dirhams or dollars.
Correct.
Your balance sheet is dollars, dirhams, euros, etc. We still haven't reached the stage where crypto is that accepted. So we created an Ethereum-based token that is directly linked to a client money account. So let's say I have $1 million in a client money account, that reflects to $1 million Jibrel dollars. So that's the first thing we did, called Jcash.
Jcash, and that's basically one-to-one backed.
Yes.
All right.
Yes. After that, we looked at debt.
Okay.
With debt, we worked with Al Hilal Bank, which is one of the more progressive banks and owned by Abu Dhabi government. We proposed to do a primary issuance of sukuk using smart contracts, meaning the process from end to end is digitally native. By the time we got done with compliance and risk, we ended up doing a secondary market private placement transaction, which is not what we initially had in mind, but it also allowed us to automate the cash flows associated with the security. But the most important lesson was banks move slow when compared to, as a crypto company, we're quite agile, or we like to think we're quite agile. When compared to banks, processes within banks take a bit more time. So,
absolutely. I mean, I come originally from the insurance background, from financial services, and to move something, which you and I maybe are able to do in 2 weeks, 3 weeks time max, it takes them months, even not years to move. And it's because they have so many legacy systems running, where you came in with your blockchain basically to really try to revolutionize and disintermediate this whole facet going forward.
I agree, and to be honest, to also be fair with the banks, a lot of it is enforced on them. When it comes to stuff like custody, for example, it is mandatory that there's a local and global custodian, which in some cases doesn't make sense. So what we've decided is, based on our learning with Al Hilal Bank, we realized it's not something that's very scalable. And at Jibrel, we want to do stuff that's scalable and can have a significant effect on the financial world.
Okay.
So we've switched our focus to focusing on startups. The reason why we've switched our focus to startups is, first of all, the funding gap for SMEs. So SMEs and startups are often used interchangeably in a wrong way. Okay. But the funding gap for SMEs in the Middle East is over $200 billion. If you think of 1 out of every 8 SMEs has access to credit, and that moves 60 to 80% of the economy. So really, access to funding, access to credit is something that the Middle East SME and startup industry is suffering from. So based on our experience with our fundraising rounds when we conducted an ICO, we realized that there is definitely a lot of potential to democratize access to investment. So creating a private financing platform that links startups and investors in a regulated manner. So let me give you an example or an analogy on why we decided to start Jibrel.
Got it.
Historically, there is a trade-off between accessibility and investor protection.
Okay.
Accessibility as in how easy is it for you to invest. Investor protection means your rights are guaranteed, let's say, or protected. Take something like Dubai Financial Markets, just down the road.
Yes.
In order to buy equities there, you need to physically go there, you need to sign about 10 to 20 documents, and then they mail you a card, your iVestor card.
Got it.
This is very heavy on the investor protection side, but it's not very accessible. On the flip side, take something like an ICO. It was revolutionary because within 2 minutes and an internet connection, you could participate in this new digital economy. So it was very accessible, yet it offered little to no investor protection, which is obviously an issue. So at Jibrel, we basically improve both outcomes. We improve accessibility through a tech-enabled financing platform, and we ensure investor protection through legally enforceable equities at ADGM. So that's in a nutshell the thesis behind
Jibrel.com, right?
Yep.
This is basically, and the launch is going to happen, or is already live? I don't know.
No, actually, it's currently in closed beta.
Okay.
And the reason for that is the ADGM have a very rational approach when it comes to regulation. We did the Hilal Bank Sukuk under the ADGM Reg Lab and had a very positive experience there. So we've decided to do Jibrel.com also under ADGM's Reg Lab. We have a limitation, which means we can only do 4 startups.
Okay.
For now. Once we finish the 4 startups, we'll be able to onboard as many startups as we wish. So the idea is to conduct these 4 startups with investors that we know, with startups that we are aware of and that are essentially handpicked, and use the learnings from those to iterate and improve the product and hopefully launch something that anyone can participate in Q1 of 2020.
All right. So yeah, can I say it's something like a sandbox right now, where it's environment where the regulators are also watching what you guys are doing for the benefit of the investors, but also at the benefit of these startups to come out. And are these really startups, as in, are we talking about seed kind of investment, you know, $50,000, $100,000, or are we talking a little bit larger amounts going forward?
Good question. I'll actually mention 2 points. Initially, the Sandbox one, and I'll explain why it's important to do this in a sandbox. In 1973, the Depository Trust Company in the United States said that share registers need to be centralized, meaning the government or some type of semi-government organization needs to have who owns what in a centralized record. So if I sell you equity, we need to go inform Dubai Economy or the DTC in the US that I'm selling you this equity. This process requires an intermediary which is only open on weekdays, closes at 4 p.m., sometimes 2 p.m., depends on working hours. But I mean, it's an added level of unnecessary complexity. In 1973, it was important because there was no digital tools to ensure you couldn't copy and paste this equity and resell it. But with the use of blockchain, you can actually become the self-custodian of your own shares. And this is something that we're proposing as part of Jibrel.com. And we always like to think of the effect or consequence of whatever technological innovation we implement.
Yes.
And in our case, the ability to hold your shares will make trading those shares a lot easier. So the idea going forward is that in 2020, you should be able to send your shares or sell your shares as easy as sending an email, which is not the case today. Sorry, we talked about the Reg Lab. The second part was...
how the process basically runs is that you want to have that easy use for the end customer. Because, you know, I mean, you've been in technology for quite some time, so you also understand that user friendliness is totally not there, and there are a lot of people you know, start using it, or for that matter, you know, just get scared and run away out of it.
Look, this is a very important topic that is directly related to traction. Hotel bookings online.
Mm-hmm.
The technology was invisible. You still select your hotel, you select your check-in date, check-out date, you pay online. The process is somewhat logical, but you're using technology to make it easier. Uber, you still decide your pickup point, drop-off point, and it just makes an existing process a lot easier. So there's no need to reinvent the wheel. Technology works best when it's invisible. So people always ask me, should we use your blockchain? The reality is, you should use a financing platform that's efficient because it uses blockchain. Mm-hmm. So today, Zomato, mm-hmm. it uses the internet. You don't call Zomato an internet company. It's a food delivery company that happens to use the internet to become more efficient. So that's the mentality that we deploy at Jibrel. We use technology to make our actual offering more efficient.
Got it. So, I mean, everything is about collaborations, right? I mean, one of the hottest things which happened in the last couple of months was about this stablecoin called Libra Association. Oh. So, right, I mean, a lot of companies, I think 20 of them got together and then started to try to set up this company to make a stablecoin within their ecosystem. Obviously, because Facebook is behind it, they got a huge reach. And we have to see how this is going to be, because right now there are a couple of backlashes from governments looking at it going forward. How do you see Jibrel.com basically being associated around, you know, other projects or companies going forward?
I think Libra, first of all, it's not a company, it's an association, and that's very smart from the legal point of view. Before living in the UAE, I used to live in Zug, Switzerland, and the Swiss usually get their finances right. They said there's a utility token, payment token, and security token. So what we're doing at Jibrel.com is part of the security token offering. And for us, honestly, we would like to collaborate with other industry stakeholders rather than compete with them. I'll give you an example. today you have a lot of informal, or some of them are formal, angel networks or crowdfunding platforms that use emails and PDF to communicate with investors. For us, we're happy to provide them with the infrastructure to do this. So it's not necessarily, we don't want to hog the whole pie. For us, it's really about improving the startup ecosystem in not only starting with the Middle East, but the vision is to become a global platform.
And that's the beauty of the internet, basically, or the blockchain for that matter. We do not know any borders anymore going forward. So, you know, by doing these kind of partnerships, somebody sitting in Amsterdam, somebody sitting in Bombay, somebody sitting here, makes the world basically go around. Now, one of the things which is also very interesting, you started off is basically the fact on remittances. So what are you guys going to do or doing basically on remittances?
So I think remittances is one of the fields that we feel quite passionate about, because at the moment, blue collar / low income immigrants are suffering because of the exorbitant fees that are charged by payment processors. The reality is, remittance cost globally is between 7 to 8%. You might see that it's only a 1% charge. Maybe that's what they charge on the transaction fee. But on the spread of currency, that's where they really rip people off. So this is a subject that we feel very strongly towards. However, we believe that it will be the likes of Facebook, Google, Amazon, etc. The big tech companies will dominate the field of remittances. And I'll tell you why. The most important thing in such a system is critical mass, right? Having the users.
Got it.
So Facebook have more users than China has individuals or citizens, or India has citizens. So over 2.3 billion people, I believe. We believe that digital payments through big tech companies will become the norm. But at Jibrel, we applied to the Central Bank of Jordan's FinTech Sandbox, and we got accepted formally about a month ago. And now we're basically going to use JCash to facilitate transfers from the UAE to Jordan as part of a test. And the test is again limited with number of transfers, number of people you can onboard, maximum transfer amount. And then after that, you can upgrade your license to something more substantial. But the reason why it's broken today is banks don't trust one another. If I'm sitting with Bank A in the UAE and I want to send money to Jordan, the process is so broken, which is why it takes time and it costs a lot of money.
Absolutely. You know, it can take 2 to 3 working days before the money arrives, and then it's also, you know, what happened to the exchange rate is always a question mark. Now, this JCash, is this a stablecoin?
Yes, yes.
And has this been issued on your blockchain basically? And is it one-to-one related towards, you know, deposits in the bank, or how does it work?
Yeah, so JCash is backed one-to-one. But we haven't aggressively marketed JCash because to scale such an offering, you need loads of cash. If you look at USDC, which is a stable coin that Circle, the exchange, launched, it has liquidity of hundreds of millions of dollars.
Got it.
For us, the use of JCash was never intended. So stable coins are used in 3 folds. The first 2 are legit uses. The third is an illicit purpose. But I'll explain all 3. The first use of stablecoins is for trading and store of value. So let's say today I have loads of Bitcoin and I want to trade on Binance. I trade my Bitcoin and I receive USDT or USDC, which is pegged to the dollar. And then I use that to enter Bitcoin again in the future. So the trading element is the first use case, which we don't do at Jibrel.
Got it.
The second one is to use it as a stable output of smart contracts. Today, the Hilal Bank Sukuk that we did pays its coupon in dollars. We can't pay it using normal dollars, we pay it using our stablecoin.
Got it.
So to facilitate stable outputs of smart contracts is the second use case, and that's something that we do at Jibrel. The third is, unfortunately, money laundering. People use stable coins and other types of crypto and any type of asset to create a web of difficult transactions that are tough to chase. And in our case, we've eliminated that by design. So, okay, today, if you have USDT in your wallet,
yes,
you can send it to any new wallet. Jcash is different. Jcash is a permissioned system, meaning you can only send it to other whitelisted addresses. So when we started Jibrel, we had a decision to make, and it was a very important decision that had a lot of consequences, and we're very happy that we took that decision. Is if you want to do full decentralization, then it's a permissionless system, and then you're susceptible to people using your assets as in illicit purposes. What we did is we gave up a bit on the decentralization element and focused on prioritizing compliance. So Jcash or any other asset issued by Jibrel can only be transferred between whitelisted addresses. As compliance, so this is not to say that we don't believe in decentralization. We actually believe very much in decentralization, but the compliance tools that are proactive aren't up to speed yet.
Got it. It's basically a phase which you're in, and this is now the phase that is permissioned, and from there you want to really try to scale it up going forward. Now there's also something called a J Wallet.
Yes.
So that's basically that you give me the permission that I'm able to receive Jcash and send Jcash to another J Wallet. Is that correct?
Actually, the J Wallet is an open source Ethereum-based storage solution. You can log into jwallet.network. You can use the web version, iOS or Android, and you can store any type of digital asset on that. At the moment, we support Ethereum-based tokens, but we'll be adding other chains as well. So anyone can download the J Wallet, and you can send Ethereum, which is a permissionless token. But if your public address is whitelisted, then you can receive JUSD, for example, which is the digital US dollar. So the J Wallet is an infrastructure product, and you can use it as you wish. But if you use a regulated asset that's issued by us, such as Jcash or the tokens that we'll issue as part of Jibrel.com, those will only be transferable between whitelisted addresses.
All right. So I use my Ether wallet a lot. One of the times I really feel that, that the user interface is not friendly at all. How is that with J Wallet right now?
Check out jwallet.network. I mean, we have an excellent design team. As a company that is... so my Ether wallet, I respect them a lot. They were one of the first to come up with a secure being a very important point, somewhat user-friendly interface.
But, I mean, I have to use MetaMask and then go into my wallet and do this. And I mean, I'm not a techie person, so in that way, it becomes a little bit difficult for me to use. I cannot explain it to my mother.
Okay, so we've actually done the J Wallet test with my grandmother before we formally launched it, and she was able to create a wallet.
So, okay, so that's a valid test. If your grandma is able to use it, then definitely it should be user-friendly.
There's two elements to it. The user-friendliness is one part, but also providing very clear instructions on how to use it, like a dumbed-down user manual on step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. I'd argue that our mobile and web versions of the J Wallet are a lot more user-friendly than many other wallets, but this is a subjective issue, right? User-friendliness. You can't score it on 10, or if we do score it on 10, I might have a different opinion from...
I mean, the beautiful part, I mean, I've not seen, as you know, with just the Libra we talked about, I've not seen, but I can imagine that, for example, because the #1 app I use on my phone is WhatsApp. Okay? So when I use WhatsApp and I send money to you, maybe using a J Wallet kind of layer on top of it, the whole idea is that, you can see, hey, I've sent you money. So you can immediately see that it's there, like a WhatsApp would work.
Oof, WhatsApp has insane potential. Especially, Facebook have said that they are going to do something called the Calibra wallet. All right, the Calibra wallet is what you'll use to send Libra. But I think the biggest breakthrough would be if they're able to embed Calibra within Instagram, WhatsApp, Facebook, etc.
Platforms, indeed.
But yeah, they're doing some amazing work. And even though you hear a lot of backlash in the news There was the letter from the US government that was that. I personally think that even if it's not called Libra, or even if it's not the same structure of like using a basket of currencies, they will launch it because they have enough money to hire the best lawyers. Sure. Today, I mean, it's absolutely absurd that if you look at how much of the world's wealth sits in Cayman and offshore jurisdictions, these are all loopholes that wealthy corporations were able to find in order to reach the end goal. So I have full confidence that Facebook or other large tech companies will be able to crack that, because I was doing a bit of research on what it costs for banks. The average small branch of a bank costs about $200,000 a year. All right, if you have calculate what it costs for UAE or Saudi banks, it's insane. So very similar to what happened to news outlets and magazines. The ones that were able to reimagine themselves as digital banks or digital outlets, sorry, are still there today. The ones that didn't, the train passed them.
So let's say I'm sitting in Amsterdam. I've got a money transfer license. Could I run a JNode?
JNode is something that we use for our own internal purposes, and it's something that we haven't monetized. The reason for that is something called there's something called Infura, which is also API access to Ethereum, and it's a free product for all. So the reason why we've created JNode is this is an experimentative phase. As much as blockchain is still in the news and there's a lot of hype around it, there's actually not that improving the status quo. So we could have used Etherscan, we could have used My Ether Wallet, we could have used Infura, but we decided to build them ourselves because of how new this industry is. You might be able to find a new way of hosting the nodes that makes it more efficient. So we initially cast our net very wide, and we got some criticism for that. Some is right in their criticism, but that was our initial business plan, to target several products and then experiment and figure out which are the ones that involve JNT, which are the ones that are going to be able to scale, and basically double down on those.
All right. So before I let you go, I go quite often to FinTech Hive, and FinTech Hive has been also the home for many years actually,
including Jibrel.
Including Jibrel. And of course, right now you guys have kind of not shifted, but looking at ADGM basically as a regulator to be in their sandbox going forward to launch your project. Is there any benefit in being in Abu Dhabi versus Dubai?
Yes, of course. There's benefits to both. I'll give you an example of Mirabeau Bank. Mirabeau Bank is a Swiss bank that has a DIFC office and an ADGM office. It's not a Catholic marriage. It's not that you're with one and you can't be with the other.
In the end, it's one country, right?
True. And we actually not only work with ADGM and DFSA, but we also work with ESCA, which is the federal regulator. Right. Each jurisdiction has its advantages. I'll give you an example. For Jibrel.com, it was a no-brainer to choose ADGM for several reasons. They have something called the Private Financing Platform Framework, which allows us to create and regulate this platform. Second, they have a crypto framework. For us, I want people to be able to invest in startups using crypto. If I do that in DIFC, probably go to jail. Crypto is not allowed yet.
Got it.
But in ADGM, someone with Bitcoin from China could send it to a ADGM regulated exchange, and then we receive dollars at Jibrel.com. So you can create an SPV in ADGM for as little as $700. There's new bankruptcy laws. So all of that was working with Eversheds. We were able to figure out that ADGM is the best place for us to launch Jibrel.com. In DIFC, we owe a lot to DIFC, to Mrs. Raja, Shireen. The team there is absolutely fantastic. I actually moved from Switzerland to the UAE because of the Hive, because of DIFC FinTech Hive.
Big shout out to Raja Al-Mazuri and Shireen.
Yeah, really, their support has been amazing. And basically, so we're doing the equities part in ADGM, but we're doing the debt in DIFC. So Nasdaq Dubai is the world's largest market for sukuk.
Got it.
If I tell a bank, let's do something related to tokenized debt they're going to tell me, all right, we need to go to NASDAQ because that's where the liquidity is. So each jurisdiction has its upside and downside. So yeah, we're continuing with both. We haven't shifted. We're operating in both. Jibrel.com has a bigger product market fit. So that's why you'll see us placing more effort in launching Jibrel.com. But our offices are there in DIFC. We'll maintain both. Actually, we're working on moving. So as I mentioned, we have our development team in Russia. We have our marketing team in New York.
Decentralized.
Yeah, now we're trying to consolidate a lot more of the presence in the MENA region.
Got it. I mean, setting up shop nowadays also it's easier in the MENA region, but you can operate globally going forward, taking in respect what is happening in Hong Kong as regulators are there, or in Europe what regulators are asking, but just operating out of an international financial center like ADGM or DIFC really makes sense going forward as we know it. Now, it is absolutely something technical which I wanted to ask before I let you go, and it's the fact about interoperability of blockchains, right? In the end, a lot of projects are here in the region, but worldwide, who are working on different kind of protocols. May it be Corda, may it be Hyperledger, may it be a public chain. What do you feel is going to be the future when it comes to interoperability of these different kind of protocols?
Look, I think it's something that's inevitable, but it's not a fight we need to focus on now. I'll tell you why. Now we're focused on creating a service that uses blockchain to make it more efficient. And that will continue operating in silos for us and other companies. Once those scale, then you will have a financial incentive to make them interoperable. This is something that Ethereum and Hyperledger are working on. So I'd say Ethereum is the world's most advanced platform when it comes to smart contracts. Hyperledger is the one that was able to get the most, let's say, corporate appeal or corporate interest, mainly because of how they're legally set up. So yeah, and for other reasons as well, like the permissioned element, etc. So if you look at Joseph Lubin, the founder of Consensus, he's now on the board of Hyperledger. You will definitely see that we're part of something called the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance as Jibrel, and that looks at not only Ethereum, but how we communicate with Hyperledger. So this is something that will definitely happen in the coming years, but I don't believe it's as important as people make it sound. Because today we're not able to get a proper use case on blockchains themselves, let alone getting them to speak to one another. So I'm bullish that it will happen, but it's not something that is an insane blocker today.
Going forward as it is. Well, as you and I both know, I mean, technology is really going fast. I mean, you just experienced last 2 years basically a huge, trying to make use cases and understand how the market is working. I always say that, technology is there for sure, but now it is how you're going to use it in your existing systems. And there is basically also where big corporations like banks have problems, adopting it as soon as possible. But going forward, I feel also that, technology, AI are all things which will make life easier as we as an economy are going into this, as I like to call it, a one-click society, right? Yeah. I mean, last week we had pizza. I want to repeat the pizza. I don't want to tell you what toppings, what size. I just want to say, hey man, last time this, repeat. One click and it's there. So with that, I want to leave you, Talal. Thank you so much for coming on the Talks and Show, and talking to our viewers on how the market is evolving, how Jibrel is actually also evolving going forward. I'm really excited about it, and I hope to speak to you soon.
Great, thank you so much.